Imagine deciding tomorrow that you're going to Antarctica, not on a cruise, not with a tour company, not as a scientist, just you, your equipment, and whatever boat or aircraft you can somehow arrange. There is no country called Antarctica, no president, no normal border checkpoint, no immigration officer waiting to stamp your passport, and no single government owns the continent. So technically, who is supposed to stop you? That question sounds simple. The answer is not. Because you can visit Antarctica. But trying to go there completely on your own means dealing with environmental laws, permits, protected areas, international agreements, extreme logistics, and one final obstacle that no government controls: Antarctica itself. Before we get to what would actually happen to you, we need to understand why the strangest continent on Earth has such strange rules. Antarctica is the coldest continent on the planet. It is also the driest, the highest on average, and one of the windiest. Almost all of it is covered by ice. In some places, that ice approaches 5 kilometers thick. Beneath it is not simply frozen ocean. There is an entire rocky continent with mountains, valleys, volcanoes, and enormous landscapes hidden beneath the ice. The Antarctic ice sheet also contains most of Earth's freshwater ice. And yet Antarctica is technically a desert because it receives so little precipitation. But people were imagining a continent here long before anyone actually saw it. Ancient Greek thinkers believed there might be a great southern land balancing the known lands of the north. Later maps showed enormous hypothetical territories labeled Terra Australis, the southern land. Interesting part? Nobody had verified it. For centuries, Antarctica existed partly as geography and partly as imagination. Then explorers started sailing farther south. James Cook crossed the Antarctic Circle in the 18th century and proved something important. Land existed farther south. Reaching it was going to be miserable. Ice, violent seas, freezing temperatures, fog, and almost no chance of rescue. Antarctica's first border wasn't created by a government. It was created by nature. Then in 1820, several expeditions sighted Antarctic land or continental ice within a remarkably short period. Fabian Gottlieb von Bellingshausen's Russian expedition approached the continental ice. British officer Edward Bransfield sighted and charted part of the Antarctic mainland. Later that year, American sealer Nathaniel Palmer reported another sighting. Suddenly, the mysterious southern continent was real, and humans immediately started doing what humans usually do when we discover a new place. We looked for something valuable. Sealers arrived, whalers arrived, explorers followed, then governments became interested. By the 20th century, Antarctica was no longer simply a dangerous blank spot on the map. It had scientific, political, and strategic value. Several countries made territorial claims. Research stations appeared. Before World War II, Nazi Germany even launched an Antarctic expedition. The 1938-39 German expedition explored an area later known as New Swabia and conducted extensive aerial photography. That part is real. What happened next is where Antarctica became conspiracy theory paradise. According to one popular story, the Germans secretly built an enormous underground Antarctic base. Some versions say surviving Nazi officials escaped there after the war. Other versions add experimental flying discs. And naturally, eventually somebody added aliens. There is no credible evidence that this secret underground Nazi fortress existed. But then something happened that made the theory much easier to sell. Operation Highjump. In 1946 and 1947, the United States Navy sent thousands of personnel, ships, and aircraft to Antarctica. Officially, the mission involved polar training, equipment testing, base construction, exploration, and mapping. If you already believe there was a secret Nazi fortress in Antarctica, a massive American military expedition arriving shortly after World War II looks suspicious. And that is how Antarctic conspiracy theories usually work. Start with something real, add something unproven. Then use Antarctica's isolation to make verification nearly impossible for the average person. The same thing happened with another theory, Hollow Earth. Some versions claim enormous hidden spaces exist inside our planet, containing an advanced civilization, sometimes connected to the legendary kingdom of Agartha. And according to certain versions, one of the entrances is in Antarctica. There is no scientific evidence for a hidden civilization beneath Antarctica, but there really is something fascinating under the ice: liquid water. Scientists have discovered subglacial lakes and water systems buried beneath kilometers of Antarctic ice. Geothermal heat from Earth's interior can contribute to melting beneath the ice sheet. That is an extraordinary scientific discovery. But underground water plus geothermal heat does not equal underground civilization. Then there are the so-called Antarctic pyramids. Images online sometimes show mountains with surprisingly geometric shapes. The explanation is less dramatic. Sharp mountain peaks can naturally form through geological and glacial processes, and peaks sticking above the ice can look especially artificial. And then we have perhaps the biggest Antarctic conspiracy of all: flat Earth. In many flat Earth models, Antarctica is not a continent around the South Pole. Instead, it becomes an enormous ice wall surrounding the entire world. Under that theory, governments must restrict access because unrestricted exploration would reveal Earth's true shape. There is one major problem. People actually go to Antarctica. Ships travel there. Aircraft operate there. Scientists from competing countries work there. Private expeditions happen. Tourists reach the geographic South Pole. So if Antarctica is supposedly hiding the edge of the world, an extraordinary number of governments, scientists, pilots, sailors, companies, and tourists would all need to maintain the same secret. Which brings us to the real question. If Antarctica is not hiding the edge of the planet, Nazis, or a civilization inside Earth, why are there so many rules? The answer begins in 1959. 12 countries signed the Antarctic Treaty: Argentina, Australia, Belgium, Chile, France, Japan, New Zealand, Norway, South Africa, the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, and the United States. That list is important because the treaty was negotiated during the Cold War. Countries that deeply distrusted each other agreed that Antarctica should operate differently. The treaty established that Antarctica would be used for peaceful purposes. Military activity such as weapons testing and military maneuvers was prohibited. Scientific investigation remained free. Scientific observations and results were to be exchanged. Existing territorial disagreements were effectively frozen instead of being allowed to turn Antarctica into another battlefield. Nuclear explosions and disposal of radioactive waste were prohibited. The treaty also created inspection rights between participating countries. Then, environmental protections became even stronger. The Environmental Protocol signed in Madrid in 1991 designated Antarctica as a natural reserve devoted to peace and science. Also prohibited mineral resource activities other than scientific research. So no, you cannot simply arrive with drilling equipment and announce that you now own the world's newest mining company. Here's the most important part. The Antarctic Treaty does not say ordinary people are forbidden from visiting Antarctica. Modern Antarctic tourism proves that. Large numbers of tourists travel there every season. Some remain aboard ships. Many make shore landings. Some travel into the interior. A small number even reach the South Pole. So now imagine that instead of booking one of those organized trips, you decide to do everything yourself. This is where things become difficult. Antarctica does not issue you a universal visa. Instead, countries participating in the Antarctic Treaty system create their own laws, controlling expeditions connected to them. Depending on your nationality, departure country, vessel, and activities, you may need permits, authorization, or advance notification. And if you're organizing the expedition yourself, you're not simply a tourist anymore. You may effectively become your own expedition operator. Authorities can care about where you're going, how you'll prevent environmental damage, how you'll manage waste, how you'll avoid introducing foreign plants, seeds, or microorganisms, what happens if you get injured, and whether somebody else will have to risk their life rescuing you. Then there are places you genuinely cannot simply enter. Antarctic specially protected areas require permits. These locations may contain especially important wildlife, scientific research, historic sites, or fragile environments. Wildlife is also protected. You cannot simply feed penguins because one of them looks hungry. You cannot casually disturb colonies. You cannot collect whatever objects you find as souvenirs. And even if you solve every legal problem, you still have a much bigger issue. There are almost no normal cities, no highway network, no convenient chain of gas stations, no hotel every 100 kilometers. Weather can change rapidly. Sea ice can trap vessels. Temperatures can become deadly. A medical emergency that would be manageable almost anywhere else can become extremely serious. And rescue can require aircraft, ships, trained crews, and enormous amounts of money. This is why organized operators dominate Antarctic tourism. They already have vessels, experienced crews, communications, emergency plans, environmental procedures, and people who actually know what they're doing. So what happens if you try to enter Antarctica on your own? Surprisingly, the answer is not. The government arrests you because Antarctica is forbidden. The real answer is much more complicated. You may legally be able to go. Depending on how you do it, you may need authorization. Some areas require permits. Your environmental impact matters. Your emergency plan matters. Your equipment matters. Your money definitely matters. Once every government document is approved, every logistical problem is solved, and every rule is followed. Antarctica still gets the final vote. Cold, wind, ice, distance, mechanical failure, isolation. Those things killed experienced explorers long before modern regulations existed. A century ago, explorers had fewer rules but far worse technology. Today we have satellites, modern ships, aircraft, GPS, and advanced survival equipment. But we also have much stronger environmental restrictions. So Antarctica has changed. The difficulty has not disappeared, it has simply changed form. And that is the real answer. You are allowed to visit Antarctica. You just aren't allowed to treat one of Earth's last great wildernesses as if nobody cares what happens there. There is no giant military wall around the continent, no secret Antarctic passport, no rules saying only scientists and billionaires may see it. If you decide tomorrow that you're going there completely on your own, first you have to deal with international rules, then national laws, then permits, then logistics, then money, and safety. After overcoming every single human obstacle, you still have to survive Antarctica. Honestly, that's probably a better reason to be careful than the Nazis, aliens, and Hollow Earth combined.